See, this is a tech team, and this is a technology workshop, but there are side effects of being scammed that we have come across as we've prepared for this workshop and talked to people. We hear about, obviously the financial impacts or other impacts like that, but it's also in case there are psychological downsides. And so I contacted Ellen Newman of the Ashby Village Connections team, part of the social care group. And she sent this message. And so I was just going to read it to you, and I'll post it in the chat as well. Okay, so being the victim of a scam does not only have financial consequences. The experience often leaves you emotionally upset. People may experience shame, embarrassment, loss of confidence, anxiety, and depression. If you have been the victim of a scam and are experiencing these feelings, you want to seek professional help, and your primary care provider and your health insurance company are good sources for mental health referrals. And Ellen also suggests that you take a look at the report in the San Francisco Chronicle about a week ago. I'll post a link up to that in the chat as well. It's a very compelling story. Okay, so let me get back to the chat on that. So we do want you to ask questions, but there are a lot of people here, so it would help a great deal if you would put your questions in the chat, and then we can pick them up at appropriate moments. Or if you prefer or find it difficult to use the chat, you can raise your virtual hand. And you find your virtual hand in the reactions button at the bottom of your screen where it says raise hand. It's not the little thingies across the top that are actually meant to be applauding or thumbs up, but the button at the lower part of that box that says raise hand. And perhaps somebody, Bill, can you demonstrate me a raise hand? Right, so you see when Bill raises his hand, if you're in gallery view, his tile immediately jumps to the top left corner of the view, which makes it alerts the facilitator or whoever's fielding the questions that a hand has been raised. So this is a great way to get attention, because with so many tiles, we're not likely to see you trying to wave your hand in your tile, especially when we're watching these slides in full view. So that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Chris to kick us off on the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Hillary. So my name's Chris Hughes. I'm also a volunteer for the Ashby Village Tech team. And in my day job, I work as a website developer. So I spend a lot of time building website interfaces. And in the course of that, I spend a lot of time thinking about how people can use websites more easily and how websites can be more friendly. So it's really become an interest of mine to try and teach people how to use the internet more effectively, how to avoid the sort of dangers of the internet. And I also have worked as a teacher or an instructor at a coding boot camp where I taught people to code. So I enjoy running workshops like this, and I hope that you get something out of it. I know it's sort of a very complex topic, and it's also sort of constantly evolving, but I hope that some of the advice we give can sort of help you feel a little more confident in using the internet and in avoiding some of the pitfalls you might encounter. So I'll start off the presentation here with my first slide. And I've tried to to divide everything up into some key points, basically some things that if you don't remember anything else from what we talk about, these are sort of the top things I want you to remember. And I'll talk about each of them in a little more depth, but first I'll go over them broadly. And the first one is to be skeptical and trust your internet instincts. So what I mean by that is that all of us as people who have used the internet have built up some level of instincts about what might be suspicious or what's supposed to happen and what's not supposed to happen. So my first piece of advice is just maintain a healthy level of skepticism and trust those instincts that you have. If something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't right. There's often there might be a voice in like in the back of your head telling you this just doesn't seem right. And so my first piece of advice is to listen to those instincts. But that's not the only thing that will help you stay safe. I think the next good piece of advice is to keep asking questions. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. But basically, I just mean anytime something you don't understand something about an email or a phone call or a text that you get, ask somebody about it. That might be a friend or family member. That might be a tech volunteer at your village, or that might be like a customer service person at the business that this text or email is from or says that it's from. And then the next point is don't answer their questions. And that just means, especially when somebody has called you or you're on a web page you don't completely trust, it's always a good policy just to not answer any questions that, especially if it's personal information or asking you to enter a password. And then one of the most important ones, I think, is practice awareness of where you are and how you got there. And that's one that sort of takes a lot of practice. Just navigating the internet and remembering how you got where you are, and utilizing the tools at your disposal to figure out whether the site or the email that you're looking at should be trusted. And then another important one is, when in doubt, just start over. So a lot of these situations we're going to talk about can be very stressful. Things can seem urgent. There can be a lot of pressure you feel to do something right. And I want to encourage you to always remember that it's okay to start over. And what that can mean is that can mean closing your web browser, and that can mean going as far as just turning off your device and turning it back on again. And what that does is that gives you a little bit of time to think about what you were doing. It puts you back in a place you're familiar with. And it's just a good way to sort of get out of any situation where you feel like you're under too much pressure or you're just not sure what to do next. So when in doubt, just start over. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about keeping track of passwords, because keeping track of your passwords is an important component of this as well. So talking a little bit more about skepticism and trusting your internet instincts. All of us as internet users probably have more instincts than you think. So trust those instincts and ask your friends and family about new websites and services you encounter to help develop your internet instincts further. So just any new thing that you encounter or any new service you're trying to use on the internet, I encourage you to ask questions of your trusted tech people, friends or family, or tech volunteers. And then one more concrete piece of advice is I like to recommend a website called trustpilot.com as a good place to check for reviews on a new site that you're not sure about. And I will just very briefly show what that website looks like. So this is Trustpilot. Gives you a search bar, and I can search for any new website that I come to. So say I've been searching for watches online, and I come across a website called russianwatches.info. I can type that in the search box here, and I can see that it actually has a pretty bad rating. And I can go down and look at some of the reviews, and people have left some bad reviews. And so I'm probably not gonna trust this website very much. I'm just gonna close it and go and look for a watch somewhere else. And I think we've all become pretty used to using reviews as a way to decide, what restaurant we want to go to or what thing we want to buy on Amazon. So this is a good website just to like find a review of any website or any company you find. And if I go to a more well-known brand or company where I'm going to choose Rolex as an example, well, they actually don't have that much better of a rating either, but I can at least read through some of the reviews and see that some people have had a good experience. And the one bad review sounds like maybe it wasn't really relevant to the website itself. So I like to recommend this website as a good resource for anytime you're encountering something online and you just want to get more information about it. And that could also be, it's also possible to just Google a new website you find and read things about it that way. And then I just want to also mention to be especially skeptical with any site that asks for personal information or a password. Anytime you're entering your social security number, if you find yourself doing that, or especially entering a password, just have that be a sign that you should be especially careful where you are and make sure that you're on the site you think you are on. So going along with this, there are some red flags that to especially watch out for to sort of increase your awareness and skepticism. So anything with an urgent request. So say an email that says this offer will only last so long, or you need to send us this information before a certain time, or it won't be valid. That sort of thing is often, that's just one of the signs you should use as an indication that something you're looking at or some email you got might be a scam or not to be trusted. And then things that are too good to be true often are too good to be true. Things that say you've won a contest, or that you need to claim your prize money, that sort of thing, often are too good to be true. And then especially things that are threatening. So that goes for phone calls and text messages and emails. If you get something that has a threatening tone, says if you don't do this, I'm going to reveal something about you, or I'm gonna, I'm holding your files hostage, or things like that. Those are especially important to be skeptical of, and maybe even alert somebody else that you've gotten that sort of message. So the next thing is keep asking questions. So there's lots of kinds of questions you can ask, but the two most important things I encourage people to ask questions about are asking questions about things you want to know more about. So like emails and messages you get or new websites you find, asking your friends and family and other tech people you interact with, does this look like a scam to you? Or are you familiar with this service? Those are the sorts of questions that help improve your internet instincts, help build your knowledge about what kinds of services might be trustworthy and what you should look out for. But then another important context for asking questions is if you're in the midst of either a phone call or an email conversation or entering information on a website. There's questions you should ask in that context as well. In the case of a phone call, you might be talking to someone who's telling you that you urgently have to do something. And I think it's very important to remember in that moment to ask some questions, to not just, even if you're pretty sure that this person you're talking to works for a legitimate company, I think it's important to practice asking them questions about what they're telling you to do. Or in the case of just interacting with a web page, these might be questions that you ask, that you're sort of asking yourself. Why is it so urgent that I have to do this now? That might reveal something about this situation you're in that helps you determine whether it's suspicious or not. And then ask for explanation of anything you don't understand. It's hard, especially in the midst of a phone call, to sort of stop and ask for clarification, especially if this seems like an urgent situation. But it's important to stop and ask questions, or stop and clarify things, because the more you understand about what's happening, the more you'll be able to identify whether it's a suspicious situation or not. And if it's someone who's not scamming you, who's legitimately helping you, they shouldn't mind answering those sorts of questions. So asking questions is a really good way to help identify scammers, and also to increase and develop your internet instincts. And part of this is identifying the relatives or friends who you're most comfortable with asking questions. So one of the sort of issues I think that contributes to scams being so prevalent in our internet lives is that people, it's really hard for anybody of any age sometimes to feel comfortable asking a question that they feel like they should know the answer to. Like, how do I use this website, or how do I use this technology? And I think it's very important for us to sort of continue to try and be comfortable asking those sorts of questions, and identifying which relatives or friends or people in your life are the most comfortable answering your questions and make you feel comfortable asking those sorts of questions. So but build confidence, asking questions. And I wrote here, even if younger relatives are impatient, because I know that often people can be, especially our relatives, can be impatient answering these sorts of questions. But I hope that we can all practice asking those sorts of questions, and hopefully people will learn to be less impatient. And then my next thing here is practice awareness of where you are and how you got there. And this one I just have to acknowledge is more difficult and takes a little bit of time to sort of practice doing this. So anytime you're seeing something you don't recognize, think about how you got there. So anytime you're interacting with anything on the internet, you're safest if you've entered the website address directly and checked your spelling. So say I'm logging into my computer. I want to check my balance on my bank account. I can be sure that I'm in the right place if I enter the URL or the website address for my bank into the address bar on my device, and I make sure that I've spelled it correctly. And then I can be confident I'm on their website, I'm interacting with the right thing. But if I'm looking at my email and I click on a link in an email, I just shouldn't be as sure that I'm in the right place. And so I would actually generally recommend avoiding clicking on any links in emails. If you get perhaps an email from your bank that's advertising a new product or that's telling you to update some information, you can always go straight to your bank's website or straight to the website of that business, and then you can be sure that you're interacting with the right place. Because even if that email was from your bank or from who it said it was from, it doesn't hurt to be sure and to enter the website address directly. And then there's some other situations where you should be a little bit cautious. Like if you're going to a link from Google, well, it's usually okay to trust a link from Google, but I would recommend a little bit of caution when you're going to something from Google, because they can't always check every link that they get. So there have been scams, for instance, where someone paid for an ad on Google to show up when people were looking for their bank website or the website of another company, and they click on those ads thinking they're going to the website that it purports to be from, and they end up not in the place they thought they were. So I would recommend some amount of caution in going to links from Google. And just a general rule is that any link you click on should only be trusted as much as where you got there from. So that's some of my tips for maintaining a sense of where you are and how you got there. And then one thing to be especially aware of is website addresses that look right, but still might not be right. So if you're clicking on links and you get to a website that has your bank's website in the URL, you just have to be extra sure that it's exactly the right website address. So my example here is if you're looking for bank.com and that's where you think you are, be careful that you're not on a website that's bank.co. That might be very similar, and at a glance, you might not notice that M is missing at the end, but you could be in a completely different place from where you thought you were. So just maintaining the practice of looking at that address of the website you're at and ensuring that it's the right one. And we're going to talk a little bit about password managers as well later. And a password manager is another good way to ensure that you're in the right place and that it will only fill in your password if you're on the site that password belongs to. And when in doubt, just start over. So in any of these situations, if you suspect a scam or you're just not sure, I encourage you to just close down your browser or even restart your device. And that's a good way to just sort of start over from scratch and go back to where you know where you are. And 99% of the time these days, you don't actually lose anything by starting over. I know we all have, it's sort of not that long ago that I think we sort of have this instinct to not turn off the computer without making sure everything's saved, or not close Windows without making sure everything's saved. But things are pretty good at being auto-saved these days, and especially if you're on a site where you're not really entering any information that needs to be saved, it's really easy to just close out and start over. And then I quickly want to mention that you can do things like clear your cache or reset your settings. And those can be sort of more extreme measures if you think you have some sort of software, some sort of nefarious software installed on your system or something in your browser that isn't meant to be there. And those are things that you can ask a volunteer or a trusted friend or family member to help you with. And then one other tip is to take a picture of your screen. Either if you want to remember something from where you are and you're going to start over, you can just do a screenshot, or even just take a picture with another device, with a digital camera you have lying around. And that's also a good tip for if you encounter something suspicious and you want to find out later whether you should be worried about it or not. You can always just take a picture of the screen. There's actually a question in the chat I want to answer, because it says, is it harmful to open an email you're not sure about just to read it to learn what it's saying, not clear from subject line? So that's a good question, because no, it's not harmful to open an email. So an email, the worst that could happen is that the person who sent you that email could perhaps know that you had opened their email. But beyond that, there's nothing that can harm you just from opening the email. You do have to be careful once you're in the email what you might click on, or be careful about replying to the email. But no, just opening the email isn't harmful. And okay, so I think I'm good with this slide. And I just want to mention that the same concepts apply to telephone calls as well as emails and pop-ups. So if you get a pop-up or an email and it has a phone number in it, you also have to be wary of that phone number, and anything that happens. You can only trust that phone number as much as you trust the page you got it from. And just like it's always okay to start over, it's always okay to just hang up or to ask for more time, because often somebody on the phone will try and rush you or get you to do something urgently. And a good strategy is just to remember that it's fine to hang up, or it's fine to ask for more time, or ask to call them back if it feels rushed, because 9 times out of 10, if it's a legitimate thing, you should have plenty of time to react. And Hillary's mentioning that these slides will be sent to everybody. So if I miss one of the bullet points, you can download these slides later. I just want to make sure I don't take up too much time here. So I'm just reiterating the original key points here. Be skeptical and trust your instincts. Keep asking questions. Practice awareness of where you are and how you got there. And when in doubt, just start over. And then we're also going to talk about keeping track of passwords. But at this point, we're going to break up into groups and do a little bit of discussion, and maybe talk about some situations that you might find yourself in, and just some questions to think about when we're talking about these sorts of situations are, is this page or email suspicious or trustworthy, and what kind of factors contribute to making it suspicious or trustworthy? And then also, what should you do now in this situation? So we're going to go into breakout groups pretty soon here. So feel free to raise any questions you have and discuss these topics. And then we'll come back and each group can share one comment they had or one question they had that arose from their discussion.
Okay, so are we back there with our audience?
I think everyone is back now.
Okay, great. I want to start with an anecdote. Some time ago, a friend of mine had a great idea to make sure she won't forget. Let's see, I've got to move this part away here. Okay. Some time ago, a friend of mine had a great idea to make sure she wouldn't forget her bank PIN. She used her birth year. It worked great until someone stole her wallet, which contained both her bank card and her driver's license, which had her birth year. She made some criminal very happy. I can go to the next one. Okay. When it comes to the PIN for your bank or anything like that, or your phone for that matter, you need a 4-digit number, at least 4 digits. That means something that no one else will guess. For instance, if you bought your first car in 1972 and your first house in 1985, use 7285. You can remember, but no one else will see the connection. Bank pins are almost always 4 digits. But computers and smartphones allow you to use longer pins. I recommend you do so. I think Mac, iPhones, I know it's 6 digits as I'm not an Apple person, but I know they use 6 digits as a rule. However, think about it this way. Every digit you add to your PIN makes it 10 times harder to crack the PIN. Because a 4-digit PIN is 10,000. There are 10,000 4-digit PINs. For 5-digit PINs, you're at 100,000. 6 digits, which is what Apple does by standard, is 1 million. So the higher you go. By the way, Androids go from 4 to 16 digits if you're really that paranoid. Great, next one. Okay, passwords. What makes a good password? It has to be long. It has to be complex. You can see the password that I have there on, I pulled that off of my password manager, which something I will get to later. You're going to use these a lot, but don't worry. I'll tell you how you can do it easily. Next one, please. I am getting, okay. If you use, okay, why do you need so many passwords? If you use the same password for all of your logins and someone cracks your Facebook password, the criminal also has your bank password and your whatever they were, could be Verizon password, all of them. So you don't want to use a single password all the time. But it's also important that your passwords might seem long and random to anyone. And making it long and random is the easiest way for it to seem long and random. Next slide, please. Okay, how do we use a password for everything you have? That's where you have a password manager. There is one what? Did you go back or forward or? Okay. There is, unlike other passwords, you have to remember. Did I mention about password managers just now? Yeah. Okay, a password manager is a database containing all of your passwords and other information that you want to give it. But the important part is for the password is that the password manager has to have its own password. And that is one that you remember, that you have to remember. You know, if you log on to a lot of sites, you probably get used to learning your unit to you. And of course, this time it can't be something like the one I showed a little couple of slides back with that long gobbledygook. It has to be something that's meaning for you to do it. For instance, you might want to pick a sentence from a play or a book, but best of all, it should be a rare book, not rare, a book that isn't well known and not a famous quote. Don't use to be or not to be. That is the question. If you really like Hamlet that much, you could do, make you a wholesome answer, my wit's diseased, but sir, such answer as I can make, you shall command. Or make it from one of Shakespeare's lousier plays where no one reads them. And if you are worried about forgetting your password, the password to the password manager, find someone you trust, like your spouse or an adult child, and give them the password manager so that if you forget it, someone else who you can trust will bring it back to you. Another way is to put it into a bank's, the boxes, one of the boxes they have there. Okay, next one, please. We've got. Okay, so what password manager should you use? I'm going to recommend LastPass, also Dashlane. I've had more experience with LastPass, although admittedly, I don't use either of them. I use an older one called, God, I don't remember his name.
I think you use KeyPass.
Yeah.
Do you use KeyPass?
Keypad?
Did
No.
you? No.
I use,
What about OnePass?
yeah, no, it's pass. Never mind. Let's go to the ones that I'm recommending rather than the one that I use. The one I use is a difficult one to use. It's called, I would recommend LastPass for people who don't already have their own. That or Dashlane. Both are inexpensive, $2 to $5 a month. And with times where you can, use it free for a while. It works in both Windows and Macs. Both come as browser extensions, which makes them very easy to use. And
I could do a quick
yeah, why don't
demonstration of
you do that?
LastPass.
Yeah.
So I have my browser window here. Can everybody see that? Does it show up above the, it should. So I have up in my extensions here in part of my browser, and it works a little bit differently on a mobile device, but it also does something similar where it can fill in my password. I basically get an icon up here, and this is all this software I've installed that helps my browser called browser extensions. But I click on it there, and it knows what website I'm on, so it knows what password it's remembered. And I click on that here, and it fills it in. And even if someone's looking over my shoulder, they can't see what the password is, but it's filled it in for me. And I can just hit sign in and get signed in. And this way I'm using a different password for each site, but I don't have to remember exactly what it was.
Thank you. And by the way,
Yeah.
one I use is called KeyPass.
KeyPass.
Yeah. And it's free. It's difficult to use for a lot of people. It's not as easy as LastPass, which is why I don't recommend it, but I've been using it since there was a LastPass. So can we go to the next one, please? And thank you, by the way. Okay, be careful with Facebook. Or this is mostly about Facebook, but it also fits for other social medias. You have to remember with social media, you're not paying, you aren't paying for a service. The reason why is you are the product that are being sold. These companies and other companies that work with them get to learn a lot about who you are and what you like. And they can find them in all sorts of ways. I'm focusing right now on Facebook because it's the biggest of them. And I'm also because it is, they're using a particular kind of trick to get information from people. Okay. Let's see, get to questions a little later. Okay.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Which one, the question?
No, sorry, something set off my Siri. I don't know what. Sorry, apologize.
Okay. What about Judith Mercer asked, what about the password vaults in your computer? As my case, Mac, are they safe? Well, I really don't know how, but that Mac does it. But I'm pretty sure that it's safer to do it with something else other than something built into the operating system. So all of these things we're mentioning are available on Macs. Okay, so your friend is not your friend. Wait, we already saw that, didn't we? Okay, some antivirus suites have a password manager. I personally haven't tried any of them, but I imagine that they probably work quite well. One thing you might want to think of is whether you have it connected with your computer and your phone, so that you always have, so that you can always get to, whatever you want to get to. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if people see this, that there are, if you're an AV member, remember, AV member, you can request help with your password manager. So, we can handle with that. Yeah. Okay, let's get back to the to what I'm showing here. Some of this stuff that happens with Facebook. You see this quite often. You have these colorful boxes in big letters asking some funny little thing like, what invention has done more harm than good? Or age yourself with a clothing name brand that was popular when you were in high school. So what are these about? They find out your age. They find out things you're like, what your politics are. And people happily, respond to them. But look down below and you see how many comments. If the number of comments has a K or worse, an M, that means that a lot of people have been reading this. And let's face it, you have never posted anything on Facebook that got more than a couple of hundred comments. But they get so many here because they are paying Facebook to post these as far as much as they can, which is why they get so many comments. And they are just avoid them, or write something about don't answer anything in this. Just so keep aware of these. Okay, can you go up to the next one? And you can see how big we've got here, 3.6 million comments. That's not someone having a little fun. That is someone doing a lot of money, finding out who you are. So keep this away. Don't answer these comments. Okay, next, please.
There were lots of questions about password managers, a lot of questions.
Yeah.
For Ashby Village members, we can help you set up a password manager, but I would say the central question was, if you set up a password manager, are your passwords accessible to you if you happen to use another device, not your own device? And the answer is yes, because you have an online account. And so you can log into your password manager through a browser on any device. And an additional comment here, if you're concerned about sharing your login and passwords with a trusted family member, partner, confidant, advisor, a password manager has so much going for it, because if you share the login and password to your password manager with that trusted person, he or she can access your logins and passwords. So, so that's for me. We could just go, how about, let's do Chris and Lincoln first, since they're, Chris, what came up in your groups?
Yeah, we had basically that same question about password managers. We also talked about using like the Mac built-in password manager and the Firefox password manager. And those are just as good in terms of safety, but not necessarily as easy to share on another device. That's why LastPass is the one that I think is the easiest to use if you want to share across a bunch of devices. Another thing we talked about was DuckDuckGo as a good alternative to Google. Google has a lot of ads that can be sort of misleading when you're searching for something. So DuckDuckGo is a good alternative, also sort of more privacy centric. Yeah, I think those are the main things we talked about. Oh, and we had the question of like whether whether there was any particular email provider that was better at detecting spam. And I kind of said, well, not really, because they're all, none of them are perfect at detecting spam. So the main thing is just to make sure you can identify when something slips through. But if I had to recommend one, I would say Gmail.
And Lincoln, what about in your group? What?
It's pretty much entirely about passwords and password managers. And we have Mac versus Mac versus Android, and Mac versus PC, and how that's not really a problem with this, because all of these are available on all of these platforms. Talked again about having it on, because it's in the cloud, the database is in the cloud, it can be accessed anywhere with the internet. And yeah, they were mostly about password issues, that sort.
Okay. We just take 30 seconds. I'm sorry. Jack, how about your group?
Well, we had much the same as the others, but two sort of specific questions. One, is it okay to do, say, 5 different passwords as you rotate through? My answer, my feeling would be better than one, but still not as good as having the old password manager to do a bunch of them. And also a question about emailing passwords to yourself. If it's on one, if you've got it stored kind of on one device, but you need it on your phone, say, you might feel tempted to email it to yourself. That's a little problem. As possible, my feeling was it's possible to do as long as you're really careful and it doesn't say my password is in the sentence, something like that. But not ideal. It's doable, but not ideal, is my feeling. Unless maybe somebody who knows more has got reasons to be wary of that. But that was basically my group.
Great. So, Pat, thank you for posting yours. Hillary, and then Bill.
Sure. We actually talked about the third question about fingerprints and iris scans and face recognition. A couple of people are using face recognition to access their phones. We don't know of an actual password manager that uses face or finger recognition. And I don't know if Lincoln had that in mind.
One password.
Sorry,
Sorry, to interrupt. One password does do face recognition on the iPhone.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And my concern has always been, well, you only have one finger, and if you damage that, you can't use it for your, getting to your information anymore.
Yeah, we actually had someone had problems that she had with getting her fingerprints. I can't use it, but you can't make it only be
right.
Yeah, because
there has to be a backup.
Yeah.
I have two.
Yeah.
Well,
you need to be able to have someone else do it if they're sick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. Well, it's 2:30, so I just want to hear, Sally, I'm just going to hold for a second. Bill, do you have something different that emerged in your group? Bill, Graham? Is Bill still there?
Yeah, he's talking, but he's muted.
Okay.
Here
now
he
I'm
is.
better.
Sorry. Did
Okay.
anything come up in your group that was different?
During the first breakout, we talked about mentioned that a email address commandeering, which hasn't been talked about much, and that gives people access to your friends. And so you wind up your email address winds up scamming your friends.
Mhm.
And so there was a couple of such instances of the people in my breakout room that had that problem. As far as passwords are concerned, we all were either using the built-in password manager of the computer or Spiral Notebook. One of the things that came up for passwords is oftentimes when you click the password window and you're given an option of a strong password. And rather than coming up with your own password, some of them thought using the strong password worked pretty well. And then that's going to be stored in the native password manager of your computer.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry to cut people off because we are late. And Pat, is there anything that came up in either of your groups that hasn't been mentioned by the others?
No, I think I covered it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we're going to have to close. We're really delighted to have all of you today. This last slide is just contact information for Ashby Village members. We tech volunteers are here to help you, and the kinds of things we can assist you with are updating your operating systems. That wasn't discussed much today, but one of the best things you can do is keep your operating systems up to date. Most of those updates contain security updates for whatever has been identified in the last few weeks as a threat. Strengthening your passwords, installing password managers, and we also not discussed today, but installing malware detection and removal apps. There are other things that we don't do, but that we do recommend. Credit freezes, that's something we could explain, but we're not permitted as volunteers to assist you with. Enabling two-factor authentication, actually, that is something we can help you with. That's an extra layer of a strategy that requires two methods of authentication to get access to your device. And in general, be on the lookout for suspicious transactions that, pay attention to your bank statements, your credit card statements, and skim them on a regular basis and see whether there's something wonky going on. So we're sure that you have more questions. We do plan another workshop on phone scams. I'm now thinking that ought to include something on texts, since people are finding those more and more common. So much to cover. It's ever evolving, and we appreciate that you're interested, because it keeps us all safe when you're concerned with your individual safety. So thank you all. We'll send you a follow-up email that will include the recording to this workshop, as well as resources that we've found on various topics that we've covered in the workshop. And that'll come towards and probably, we hope, by the end of the week, maybe next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.